one of my early pods, I had someone, Lewis from Stubble & Co.
Yeah.
He messaged me. He was like, "You've got to get Fergus Crawley on." And then since that point, I think it was maybe like a year ago, I then asked you, I think I DM'd you, I can't remember where it was, like a fair few months ago. And now here we are.
Here we are, indeed.
Welcome, Fergus.
Thank you.
Thanks so much for coming on, man.
No, happy to be here.
But look, thank you so much for making the trip down from Edinburgh.
No,
Probably
not at
the
all.
longest commute a guest has made for this pod.
We'll claim it as that.
Yeah.
It's, I'm split between the two, but this was a contributing factor to why I'm here. So yeah, we'll call it a commute.
Amazing, man. You know what I have to say, and I don't know if this is offensive to a Scotsman, but for a Scotsman, you don't have the strongest of accents.
My parents are from the northwest of England.
About to say, because I could sense a bit of northern.
So I should sound Scouse.
Okay.
But I don't.
What, so your parents are Liverpudlian?
They're from the Wirral, which,
yeah.
depending on which side of the water you're from, you'll have different opinions
Is
on.
the Wirral a river?
No, the Mersey's the river.
Okay.
And then Wirral is over the other side.
Right.
It's a peninsula,
Okay.
actually.
All right.
And Scousers view it as, some parts of it as posh Liverpool. Some people view it as Cheshire. I think it used to be Cheshire.
So a lot of the footballers live in Cheshire, don't they?
I think so, yeah. I think my parents are there now. They're keen to move back up at some point, I think.
Wicked.
Because I was born in Edinburgh and lived in Edinburgh until I was 18. And still currently live in Edinburgh. And
Mate, it's a beautiful city.
sound like this, so fuck knows.
Well, I sound as southern as they come, so I'm sure you sound very northern compared to me.
Yeah, it's growing up in Scotland, I was a posh twat, and then went to uni in England, and I was a scummy bastard.
Yeah.
But to paraphrase in a nicer way some of the phrases that were used against my accents, but here we are.
Look, I just want to kick things off. I wanted to sort of just dig deep into your early career, really, man. Obviously, this podcast is here to kind of celebrate. The way I visioned it when I started it was I want to bring on people who have A, done really hard things in their life, which you have, B, produce content on a platform that inspires people. Again, you do exactly that. And C, someone that's just constantly trying to push themselves and sort of kind of break what's possible, really, I guess, in the fitness space. And you have someone that has done exactly that. Talk to me about how you got into this space.
Yeah, well, thank you, first of all. Those are boxes I have tried to tick over the years, some better than others, and balancing all of them is a challenge, but I guess that's probably been the theme of a lot of discussions you've had. So entry point for me was really 2018 in a coffee shop in London, where I opened my laptop. I was working down here full-time at that point. I was still solely a powerlifter.
Yeah.
I opened my laptop one morning and I just got hit with this overwhelming sensation of just, I'll call it white noise, but it was just this sort of stress. I'd just describe it as. It was a sensation that I'd only felt before previously when I'd been suffering with my mental health in the past, and I'd come out of that and I, at the time, recognized, okay, you're slipping back towards that. And this is something that you've experienced once before. So what can you do to try and manage this? So sorry to my employer at the time, but I spent the rest of that morning trying to solve that problem rather than doing the work that I opened my laptop to do in the first place, and highlighted the fact that I was missing a bit of a deeper sense of fulfillment in my life at the time. So the question was, how can I find one? How can I find a sense of fulfillment, of purpose that isn't doing a job that I wasn't really enjoying? I was living in Brixton at the time and travelling to a gym in northwest London called Genesis in Alperton, which is near Wembley, because they had very specialist powerlifting equipment, and I really kind of enjoyed the gritty, very strength training oriented vibe that it had.
And when you say you were powerlifting, were you doing this competition at a competition level?
I had been competing up until, I've been doing competitions very regularly until about 2017. I think my last competition was November 2017, and then I just kind of, the last competition I did, I put the deadlift down. I failed my last deadlift actually, so I didn't even put it down. I walked away from the bar with a crampy hamstring, thinking, this isn't really doing it for me anymore. But I still love training. I still love discipline. I still had the routine. That was a part of what I was at that point. So I kept training as if I was a competitive powerlifter, but it just wasn't giving me what it did. So combine that with the lack of fulfillment from my work, and slipping into some bad habits down in London, as I'm sure a lot of people new to the city will do. And I then decided that, you know what, there are things within your control that you can do better here. So let's assess what that is. And I essentially asked the question of, how can I use the physical performance strengths that I have for something that I care about?
Yeah.
At the time, I was good at squatting. I have short femurs. My squat's always been about the same as my deadlift. At the time, I could squat 260.
Jesus, man.
So that was...
That's like, I reckon, three of me. I'm about 80 kilos, 85 kilos.
Yeah, so it's more than three of you.
Yeah.
Was it three of me at the time? It wasn't slightly less than three of me at the time. I was a bit chunkier back then, but it was okay. Right, I'm good at squatting. What can I do with this? My friend was opening a gym up in Edinburgh in November that year. Playing rugby, growing up, I'd always had a bit of an affinity with the charity Movember, as I just saw it as a bit of fun and it had a bit of a deeper meaning behind it. But what really drew me, a young bloke with what I'll call a bit of a warped sense of masculinity at the time, I felt that the moustache and the humour around it was disarming for the deeper meaning, whereas other charities were a little bit more full frontal with the deeper meaning, which is ultimately the whole premise of the charity. That's why it's done so well. So I thought, okay, I'm going to do something for Movember that is going to be a bit of a PR stunt for my friend's gym that's opening up north, but it's going to give me something to train for. It's something I can talk about meaningfully. I'm going to create an Instagram account and document my training. What am I going to do? Spent a little bit of time researching online, found that 500,000 men die at the time. It's a number that's since gone up, unfortunately, but 500,000 men die by suicide every year around the world. This was in about August 2018, and decided that I was going to attempt to squat cumulatively 500,000 kilos in 24 hours, which is a terrible idea. And that is a theme that I'm sure will be developed over the rest of this discussion.
Word.
So that idea was born out of foolishness, optimism, and ignorance, we'll say. But at that point, I immediately refound a bit of a sense of fulfillment. So the following day, I phoned Movember first thing in the morning. They picked up, which I actually was quite impressed by. It was just somebody at head office for the size of the charity I really enjoyed. Told them what I was doing. They were like, oh, this sounds fantastic. I'll sync you up with Ozzy, who is still the sort of the lead manager for me there. And I just started making it up as I went along. So started an Instagram called 24_hours_of_power, which was what
really
it was called.
Great SEO.
Really, really good. Fantastic. So it was essentially a charity fundraising page designed to document my hard training as a way of guilt tripping people into fundraising.
Yeah, nice.
That was the premise. So that began. As I said, made it up as I went along, and the opportunities and exposure and things that came up quickly and aggressively was pretty incredible. And the key detail was, when I said publicly, it was just my personal Facebook and a brand new Instagram at the time, I am doing this challenge for men's mental health and suicide prevention, with no intention of sharing my own experience with that. Within the first 2 weeks, I had so many messages from friends that I'd known at primary school that I'd disconnected from, people from school, people that I'd met, friends of a friend at uni that reached out saying, oh, it's great you're doing this because of this, or I've had this experience. And there were loads of people that messaged me that I didn't expect to have a connection to the project, which ultimately gave me the confidence that, okay, my perspective on how this topic is interpreted was wrong, and that gave me the confidence to actually share my negative experience with mental health and ultimately a suicide attempt in May of 2016. So sharing that publicly after the first 2 weeks, that was the first time I'd shared that outwardly to the world, which I did on my personal Facebook and that Instagram at the time. The outpouring of support, disbelief and surprise from people, but in a positive sense, was I mean, that moment was life-changing in and of itself, because it flipped my perspective on its head in one day, where I went from believing that I'd be interpreted in this way, and actually the reality was this way.
Before we continue with the episode, I wanted to remind you of my sponsor here on the podcast, X Miles, your one-stop shop for everything sports nutrition. Whether it's gels, carb mixes, electrolytes, they have literally everything you need for endurance sport. They have all of the top brands, and brands in which that I use on a week-to-week basis, whether it's for training, whether it's for race day, or even recovery. Those brands include Morton. You know me, I use Morton gels every race. Piliformance Magnesium, something I've been using more frequently so I can aid my recovery. I've also been using their creatine as well. And creatine, of course, is something that a load of experts are saying now is so vital to a healthy training stack. And of course, my hydration partner, Cadence, is stocked on their site as well. X Miles are giving you a special offer, and you can get 10% credit back from your first order. So let's say you spend 20 quid on the site. you will then be able to get 10% of that value off your next order. But it doesn't end there. They have put together a special bundle just for you, the podcast viewer or listener, and that is the Motional Intelligence Bundle. In there, you'll find Morton gels, you'll find Cadence electrolytes, and Pillar Performance Magnesium. Those are 3 products that I use. They're part of my routine, they're part of my training, they're part of my race day. So if you want to give the products that I use on a week-to-week basis a go, you can do so for less than 11 quid. They have put together this bundle. I'll put the link in the description. And of course, the link for new customers to get 10% off your first order. On with the episode. When you're coming up with this challenge, and you knew the deeper rooted meaning behind it, how did you come to the decision that you were going to kind of come out and sort of tell the world that you had this experience?
Yeah, in honesty, I can't actually remember the moment that I thought, yeah, I'm ready to do this. But it was that first 2-week period where, truthfully, I probably, maybe subconsciously, wanted this to happen. I did not start the project as a way of cathartically sharing my story with the world for my own gain. I wanted to keep it to myself because that's what I'd done previously, which was ultimately why I got myself into such a bad situation in the first place. But it was just the total surprise that I experienced from those initial messages of support, encouragement, buy-in, from strangers. Ultimately, I mean, they were strangers. They were connections of mine. They weren't close friends. Obviously, close friends were very supportive and surprised by it because I'd done such a good job.
Were there a lot of people that found out for the first time who were very close to you?
The only people that, at that point that knew were my immediate family.
Really?
That was it. Yeah. So, yeah, everybody did. And to be honest, I got maybe a little bit lost in the sauce the first few weeks and didn't give close friends a bit of a heads up or anything like that, which I should have done.
But I mean, I personally think it's easy to reflect and look at those sorts of things and go, I should have done this, this, and this. But ultimately, it's a very, very personal story that you were having to tell. I don't think there's any right way of going about it.
I think the big, if I could pinpoint one thing that allowed me to do it with confidence and without reservation, it was just momentum.
Yeah.
And that was wonderfully disarming because up until that point, if you'd asked me 2 weeks prior to that, will you ever share this with anyone outside the people that already know? The answer would have been a firm and very decisive no.
Yeah.
But the way it was received in the first 2 weeks inverted my worldview and has done ever since, which I'm very fortunate for because it means it has no power. It's very much a part of my past, but it has no power over me anymore, where I feel the need to fall into any of the previous traps that I did, which is if I'm struggling with something, repress it, deal with it yourself, rather than immediately sticking my hand up and saying, look, I could do with a bit of help here. And in training, in business, in day-to-day interactions and social interactions, relationships, that is an absolutely essential component of forward motion. And yeah, I think that the key thing is it was the people that reached out to me in the first 2 weeks gave me the confidence to share it with the world. So I've never actually said this, but I massive thank you to those people. Yeah,
for sure. And I think you probably were quite early on in terms of being a figure online, especially a male figure online, opening up about suicide. And I think it was probably very disarming for young men who saw you and thought, he's a really strong guy, like he's probably got everything going for him. I think no one was really used to seeing people probably like yourself in very good shape, all of that kind of thing, open up and say, look, I've really struggled and I've not been in a good place. It kind of makes it okay for people to struggle.
I think that was a huge part of it. And I mean, I'd been a bit of a cliche up until that point. I'd been a former rugby player, driven health and fitness. I was in good shape. I'd been ostensibly successful in terms of good exam results, good university, good grad scheme, all of this sort of stuff. Yeah, so
got a model student almost.
I ticked all the boxes that through deciding that those were boxes I wanted to tick, which I guess is important because in deciding those were the boxes that I wanted to tick, my definition of success and my definition of masculinity as to how to approach that success or the pursuit of that success is ultimately what nearly killed me, because I wasn't doing it for me. I was doing it because it's what I believed I should be doing. And there's a very big difference between those things, as I learned. So in 2018, when I shared that, I think you're right. I think it was ahead of the curve, and I'm so thrilled that it's now a much more open conversation. even though it's kind of gone the other way a little bit recently with anti-men's mental health movements and things.
I wanted to talk about that in a bit, yeah.
Yeah, we'll come on to that. And honestly, it's not something I pay much attention to because I just try and very much stay in my own lane these days and sort of protect my own energy, so to speak.
Sure.
But the absolute key that I discovered quickly was, and this was massive for me as well, in reverse, was the biggest contributing factor to me feeling more myself and feeling more secure in the reality of my experience was familiarity. Mm-hmm. And by sticking my neck out as a result of that momentum, that little bit allowed a lot of other people to go, oh, hang on, that's how I felt. I'm not unique. I'm not weird. I'm not alone. Because the way I thought that I was when I was suffering with depression at my peak, I genuinely felt like the world's biggest failure. There was an element of guilt because I had a roof over my head. Mm-hmm. I had my parents were together, loving parents, had access to friends, had access to family. All this amazing privileged things to have.
You felt too much perfection in your life, essentially.
But also, there's people much worse off. It was a real self-punishment cycle where I was like, why do you feel this way when, on the face of it, you've got a life that people would cut their arm off for?
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, just to distill it down, I was just, in my opinion, a human that was following the wrong path quite aggressively. I decided what I wanted the rest of my life to look like in a very linear, progressive, sort of climbing the greasy pole sort of way. And because I decided that's what I said I was going to do, I was militantly working my way towards that, even though it was making me progressively more and more miserable, which is interesting. And I guess from a work ethic and an endurance and training point of view, there's a part of my personality that, if translated properly, is very useful. But the big thing for me was familiarity. And I think that's where we've made huge, huge bounds in terms of the conversation, is that more and more men that may not have spoken about this stuff previously, rugby players, footballers, politicians, although I think they're less trustworthy than ever. But I think the more and more people that, on the face of it, you wouldn't expect to be talking about this stuff or suffering, that are ostensibly strong, so to speak, whatever that means to the individual, has helped a lot of men become more comfortable with their own situations. I
think we're at quite a pivotal part of society where we are all disarming each other in a way. And let's say, if you look at, I'm just going to make it relevant to content right now. Content that's thriving is the content that's relatable.
Yep.
So there's no kind of smoke and mirrors to it. It's something that a lot of people can see in their own lives. And therefore, in emotion kind of conversations, I guess the most relatable individuals are ones that communicate the feelings that everyone else watching has. I feel like now so many individuals see so much online where people doing amazing things. Do you think that has an element to sort of...
Is aspirational social media content net negative or net positive?
Yes, exactly.
So from my point of view, massively net positive.
Yeah.
I can fully understand why, for those people that may have a less positive interaction with it, how it can end up a net negative. But I think it ultimately comes down to curating your social media feed to be something that you feel aligned with and is something you've chosen, which is harder and harder to do with algorithms these days. But I think that's a mistake a lot of people make, is they willingly sit there and absorb stuff that doesn't make them happy. And I think something I always encourage people to do is, if they have a negative reaction to any social media content, just remove that from your feed. If somebody wants to unfollow me because I'm doing something stupid and they think, you know what, that seems a little bit too far-fetched for me to even interact with at the moment whilst I'm focusing on my 5K, please unfollow me.
That is so well put, because I caught myself recently, having just completed this 70.3. I've, for the last 2 years, just been constantly trying to one-up myself every single time. And, you know, whether it started with a half marathon, a marathon, half Ironman, it's constant. And I see in the comments, and I know people don't mean this in a bad way at all, but I see in the comments people going, oh, when are you going to do the full Ironman? And things like that. And they're just being gassed for me. They're just excited. Yeah. But I'm looking at that and going, are we as a society now just constantly thinking, what's next? Because for me personally, I caught myself doing that for so long. And I need to take a pause and sort of be like, right, look at that lad back there and what he's doing now. At the start of 2023, I was like 96 kilos, so unhealthy, like fucking in the office, having takeaways like 4 days a week, and just living like a pig, mate. And that's fine if you want to do that, but you've got to be able to train with it. You've got to be able to live that balanced life. And I just wasn't doing it. So that change happened as a result of me being self-aware.
Yep.
But I've never once, till now, sat back and gone, fuck, man, like, I've done all that.
Yeah.
And I think it's fine to continue trying to do hard things and setting yourself goals, but just remember what you've done along the way.
100%. And it's something I've been terrible at doing over the years. And I think I was a little bit earlier to a lot of the sort of ultra endurance stuff.
Yeah.
Which means I've gone through the wheelhouse, the post-depression, come down, the blues, all that stuff.
It's tough, isn't it?
Yeah, it's really tough.
Yeah.
I think the core question that I really encourage people and myself, easier said than done sometimes, to keep in mind is why are you doing the things that you're doing, and why do you feel the need to move on to the next thing?
Yeah.
And to really try and unpack that, because if it's for the wrong reasons, then that's a slippery slope and a spiral that I've been in before, and I know what it feels like now. What I'm trying to achieve is, one, first and foremost, personal happiness.
Yeah.
Two is create an unbelievable community of people training across strength and endurance disciplines all over the world, which we've got with Omnia and is growing really, really nicely. And thirdly, to try and encourage people to not fall into the trap that I did, which is to make one discipline their whole personality. And therefore close themselves off from life experiences that can be very fulfilling.
Yeah.
And that's borne out in the content across all of those three. But if that content is not creatively stimulating, it feels like a chore. And if it feels like a chore, it's not going to be very good.
No, people see right through it.
Yeah.
Talk to me about Omnia then. What is it that you've created and how did this come about?
So started in March 2021, and essentially, I mean, to be brutally honest, it was began as a one-to-one coaching company for me to make an income, leaving my full-time work. Cool. And as time's grown, obviously the hybrid training space has grown and grown and grown, and potentially become a little bit misunderstood. But we sort of kicked it off with the intention of really absorbing those people that wanted to train across strength and endurance disciplines separately, and to make progress in both concurrently at that early stage. So that was 2021, after a couple of years of me documenting sort of my proficiency across those disciplines on YouTube, on Instagram, and learning along the way how best and most effectively to do that. We've just had a massive restructure and remodel of everything, which is very exciting. We did that in June. And team is, as of Monday, 8 full-time staff, and 4 part-time. So we're in a great place.
Wow.
Very exciting. We've had over 10,000 athletes that we've worked with.
That's incredible.
In varying capacities, so whether that's one-to-one, group, or sort of an off-the-shelf training plan, so to speak, across 84 countries, which is the stat that blows my mind the most.
That 84 countries, what's the roguest one?
What is the roguest one? We've got our third...
When I say rogue, by the way,
you
know what I mean?
I'm trying to think what the ones that the emails that have come through, it was sort of Slovakia came up, and I thought, never thought we'd sell to somebody in Slovakia. The third person to purchase on the new remodel, which is just a 3-tiered subscription model, was from Iceland, which is great.
Sick.
So at one point we had one customer from the UK, one from the US, and one from Iceland, and I thought, there we go, global superpowers, phenomenal. And yeah, I'm trying to think. I could pull out the data. I'll find the roguest.
Don't worry, man.
And
Don't worry. I don't mean to put you on the spot.
screen now. But yeah, that's the stat that blows my mind the most. But at the end of the day, I think what we really appeal to is those that take their training very, very seriously, but don't take themselves too seriously.
Okay, nice.
And what I mean by that is, we work with athletes that don't need any incentive to train. They just want to know how most effectively to do it and feel like they belong to something a little bit bigger. Yeah. So community interaction in the online space is tough, because obviously people are disparate and all over the world across 84 countries. So that's why we've restructured things recently, to try and really consolidate that community online, because I've been really comfortable over the years doing all my training on my own. I've had 7-hour brick sessions on my own. It's never really bothered me. I'm filming some of them sometimes, so I'm kind of on my own, but not really. But last year, I just, the excitement and ease of getting out of bed to do a 3, 4, 5 hour zone 2 session on a Saturday morning just wasn't there. And I found that for whatever reason, I think it's because I was spending so much time on my own in the office, operationally with the business, to then go and do all my training on my own. That lack of like-minded community was what I really missed. And I think as the fitness industry has grown, and we're sort of going a little bit full circle in terms of nutritional misinformation and all of the sort of mid-2000s bullshit magazine cover stuff that we're seeing, people just want simplicity, a plan, a clear direction, and a sense of belonging so that they can get on with their lives. Because we're not professional athletes. I'm not a professional athlete. I mean, there are some threads online that will claim that I get paid to train for a living, which unfortunately isn't the case, and I actually wouldn't want to do.
What threads online are you talking about?
Let'sRun.com, slowtwitch.com.
Let's Run. They've probably got me in there, to be honest, talking about different people.
It won't take long, but essentially, for me, I very much view. Obviously, training is a huge part of how I make a living, and much more a part of my life than it would be for somebody working in IT consulting.
Yeah.
But I do still need to manage running a business, being leveraged, the risk, the finances, the people, all of that stuff involved, and that can pull me away from things. So a lot of the challenges that I face are, in many ways, relatable to others. But what we really want to achieve is we just want to help people. We want to transform people's lives through fitness and adventure. It's essentially our mission, and that is based on enjoyment primarily and exploration. I think the biggest driving factor for me in everything that I do is curiosity. In that, what if, can I, could I, where should I? All these questions are the things that drive me. It's never, will this perform well? Is this relevant? Et cetera, because I just don't enjoy it. And frankly, I've got too much on these days to be able to spend time doing things that I don't enjoy, because I know I'll do them badly. And if I'm doing them badly, then everything starts to sort of not crumble, but I can see the slippery slope start to form. My work ethic is all in all the time until a lesson is presented, and then you take the lesson and you go again.
Essentially, until you burn out.
Yeah, effectively. The problem is and I don't regret doing any of this, but essentially when I kicked off doing this full time, I sort of hedged myself a little bit across several things. So different platforms, podcast, business, public speaking, I do a lot of as well.
Oh, amazing.
And I've got these multiple areas that I can focus on. And for 4 years, for 3.5 years, that's been sustainable. And when we hit a certain point of growth with Omnia, and operationally, a lot of my time was being consumed with that, it started to pull me away from some of the more creatively stimulating things that I really enjoyed. And that's where I started to feel that I'd become an employee within my own business rather than sort of moving the business forwards. And my strengths are all, I guess, growth and ideas related in terms of how best to do that. And when the things I'd spread myself across started to suffer as a result of something requiring most of my attention, there was a bit of a conscious stock taking for me last year where I've had to streamline things a little bit more. So there's been changes. I put the podcast on pause in November last year. There's been the restructure and remodel of how we do things with Omnia so that it can be more optimized for us and for our athletes moving forwards, which has been a huge amount of work. Investing in people, investing in the office, the space we've got in Edinburgh, all this sort of stuff. And I mean, even being split between Edinburgh and London is a conscious decision for me to keep my head switched on. And the biggest thing that I've learned is conventional wisdom does not apply to this way of existing because things move very quickly. And we were laughing about it beforehand. The house that I was in, when did we get it first? September 2020. And then was in it until October last year. We got it because it was a bit out of town in Edinburgh, had space for a home gym, had space for a dedicated room for an office, which became a podcast studio as well. And then I had my turbo in the other side of the garage. I was doing all my running, all my riding. I had the treadmill in there as well. So it was effectively a living office. And then we started to have visitors that we were filming videos there. And at some point, I was living in my workspace rather than the other way around. And that put me in a bit of a negative headspace for a while. And I couldn't quite figure out exactly why. Got the office, that then separated it. But in some ways, I was aware that for some reason I felt disconnected from where I was living.
The damage had been done almost.
Yeah, and I did everything I could to change it. And this is, I was super aware of how much my environment was having an impact on my output. And my output is important to the survival of everything going on at the end of the day. And as I said, the first thing I flagged earlier, personal happiness is the thing I try and put first and foremost. Yeah. So when that's suffering, everything else comes crumbling down. So moved house in October last year, which has made a huge difference. And office is sort of structured now with more people buzzing around it, which is great. And I've got certain tasks that I do in certain locations because I'm more conscious of how much of an impact environment has. But I'm also aware that 40% of our business is in America. I'm looking to spend more and more time over there. So settling down and living a really structured life is something I've tried to create in many ways, but that's somewhat at odds with a lot of the business training, YouTube channel growth goals that I have. So I've found myself in a really quite open-minded, nice middle ground now through experience, lessons, mistakes, failures, all these things that have contributed to kind of be pretty confident now with how Erin and I want to spend the next couple of years for us to be happy, but growth-minded, but not doing things that contribute to all of the things that are important to us. Whereas I think I've been really bad over the years of just making all of my decisions with how does this contribute to the channel, the training, and the business first and foremost, which Erin, my wife's been incredibly patient with, and I could not do half of this without her help. But we've got 2 dogs, which, I mean, they're very easy to look after unless they're off lead outdoors in a new place, which is chaos. But indoors, in cafes, they're fantastic. So they're very easy to look after. But I think, I think the balance is tough. I think a real key thing for me is not to punish myself when I get it wrong. It's just to look at what has led me to this point where I feel I've got it wrong. What lessons can I take from that and apply that moving forward? And again, that's where having support from Erin and the team around me, owning sort of extreme accountability. If you can own where you went wrong, highlight it, and then not do it again, you'll be better off.
There's a big theme in life for me as individuals I interact with and stuff, and I always seem to get along best with people who are able to hold their hands up at mistakes that they've made to themselves or to other people. I always find that as with human beings, I clash with people that aren't able to do that because I feel like this sense of I don't want to say anger, but like a bit of angst and a bit of animosity, or like when I know someone's done something bad or done something wrong to themselves or to others, but they're unable to see it or they're unable to just go, you know what, I was in the wrong here. It really frustrates me.
No, I know what you mean.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, 100%. I think that is one of my favorite things about training with intention is you get out what you put in. Yeah. And there's nowhere to hide unless you're genuinely able to convince yourself that you not doing the training wasn't the reason that things didn't go to plan. But I think the structure and the black and white input v output is a great way to train accountability in people that might not be as willing to engage in it in the first place.
Do you think like there can be really positive mental improvements that can be made from having a fixed training goal, let's say, like that? Like, do you think individuals can really change their spots when they put their mind to a task?
I firmly do. And I will say with confidence that the biggest revelations I've had in life have been when I've been absolutely in the bin mid-event. And that is because I view events as victory laps that conclude the process. So the process / the journey of getting to the start line is where the value lies. The event itself is just the victory lap. That's how I view things. Yeah. And the only question I ask myself is, have I done everything I could within my power to be stood here at the start line now? And the answer's never been no. If it was no, then I wouldn't engage in my victory lap because there's no victory. I haven't done the work. For me, that disarms expectation, because it means that whatever happens next I get to enjoy, I get to reflect on, and I am ultimately a result of the work I have done and the variables that are about to unfold. And that's why ultra-endurance, triathlon are great, because they throw variables at you that you have no influence over. Whereas, I mean, I'm currently dealing with a stress fracture in my hip, and I've been thinking about this quite a lot this week because I had a really good day outdoors, swimming and cycling on Tuesday. Running for me for the first... for the 6 months leading into the end of May, so basically the first 6 months of 2025 were very controllable metric running focused, and I really did enjoy elements of that, but there were lots of elements that felt quite restrictive to me in terms of the exploration, the nature, the variety, the opportunity to interact with different landscapes, different places, all that sort of stuff. It all became quite binary, quite metric driven, and I don't feel that I got to take as much from the process. There was a lot more emphasis on the outcome and the event itself rather than there was with the process and the journey. And I think getting back into open water swimming and getting back on the bike recently has made me realize that I do always need an element of that process-driven day-to-day value. Otherwise, I'm doing things for the wrong reasons for me personally. Which isn't me saying that I don't enjoy running for binary metrics. I very much do. But just for me to be honest to myself moving forwards that I am very much process over outcome driven. And I think for most people, that's where the value is. It's the commitment to Z and then A through Y that is actually where most of the lessons learned and the value come from.
Sure.
But people often forget that. And I've had conversations with people that say, I want to go sub 12 my first Ironman. Brilliant. Doing your first Ironman, that's sick. They go 12:03 and they're disappointed. And you're like, well, hang on, you've just done your first Ironman, you've trained for 20 weeks, you've sacrificed this, you've done that, you've flown here, you've had this amazing experience, and you're there thinking, fucking hell, I was 3 minutes short. And I think there's
that it just angers me hearing stuff like that. Genuinely.
There's more and more of that happening, I think, especially down here. I think in major cities, I think where there's really big communities of fitness, I think there's a lot, there always will be in humans. I think there's a lot of, there's pockets of peacocking developing. There's all the sort of human psychological things happening that I think mean that it's very difficult to detach ego from individual performance and, most importantly, what underpins the reason why someone is pursuing individual performance.
Yeah.
For me, it is and always has been, and I hope always is, for self-development, exploration, lessons, value, life experiences and memories. I very much view the times, the numbers, as a bonus and an output of the work that I do along the way, which is a very drawn out and controlled process. Events aren't nearly as controlled and they aren't nearly as drawn out. You might turn up to an Ironman and the swim's cancelled. You might turn up to an event one year and it's a thunderstorm, and then the next it's perfectly still and 12 degrees, crisp weather, absolutely ideal.
Or your gears break.
Yeah, which has happened to me in a double Ironman before, twice in fact. So it's the ability to be able to remain calm under pressure in events that I have chosen to do is the most translatable skill that I've been able to apply outside of those events. And that has only come through repetitively and increasing my exposure to them over time. Yeah. Do I have the ability, or did I have the ability to maintain composure and view things as controllable or not that I do now 4 years ago? Absolutely not. That's come from doing the reps and constantly pushing the boat out, but acknowledging that along the way that I am learning. This is new. This is the best bit. I get to learn by committing to this process. You don't sign up to an Ironman and have the ability. The training is what gets you there. That's the journey. And I do think that, I mean, I'm biased. People may disagree with me on this, but I do think for the vast majority of us that aren't aspiring to be professional athletes, times, placings don't matter.
No.
Because there's no reward. You're not getting paid to come 17th out of 299. You might qualify for Kona in an Ironman, but then if you're wanting to win that, then that's probably where maybe you could consider becoming a professional triathlete. But there's a big gap between those two things. And I do think there's, for whatever reason, there's more and more emphasis on that these days, where I personally have seen the most life-changing value, having come from the other end of the spectrum, from really emphasizing what am I getting as an individual that will make me better as a result of this process.
Yeah.
And that's why I love the variety of training across disciplines, and why I was so drawn to the concept of hybrid training in the first place, is because it gave me the opportunity to be a student in other things again. And that's
the curiosity element is something that's really, really captured me over the past couple of years. Like, I've gone from someone who had absolutely no idea about triathlon 6 months ago to train to my first 70.3. And the amount that I've learned along the way is the same blueprint that running gave me 2-3 years ago when I first started properly locking in with it. Every week I learn something new, whether it's about my own body, whether it's about the kit, whether it's about the tech behind, the nutrition and all of this stuff that I just find so fascinating. And it adds value to me as an individual because I then know something else.
Yep.
You know what I mean?
Yep.
I know I have a niche of knowledge that other people don't know. And that's just, I think probably for me, the most powerful thing about training for something is the knowledge that you pick up along the way. Obviously, the physical benefits are amazing, don't get me wrong. But I found that, particularly in this 70.3 process, the value that I got from it was second to none.
I think the mantra that has done me the most good over the years, and has done for a lot of people I know as well, is remember that no one cares.
Yeah.
No one cares. You care, your mum cares, your partner probably cares, but they're probably just there because they care about you and you're excited about it. And that ultimately is the beauty of all this stuff, is that you are committing wholeheartedly to something that you care about, and that is a wonderful and beautiful thing that's going to teach you a lot of lessons. So if at any point along the way you potentially think that other people care about it as much as you care about it, then you might start falling into the trap of doing it. It's going back to that performative discussion we had earlier, is if you're not doing it for you and you alone, then you start to pull on a thread that might unravel over time. I'm just firmly of the belief that as soon as ego creeps in this, sustainability goes out the window. And sustainability, I think, is the number one contributing factor to athletic performance over time. And ultimately, again, life experience, enjoyment. If you're able to keep climbing this ladder, you can go and do an Ironman in Lanzarote. You can go and do an ultra in, I don't know, the biggest mountain in Australia, which I was going to try and pronounce, but I decided against. It begins with a K. Kosciuszko or something.
I don't know much about.
I don't know why I went there.
The mountains.
I don't know why my brain went there, but yeah.
But yeah,
betrayed me.
Whenever someone's losing sleep over something, it's like, why are you losing sleep? Like, no one genuinely cares apart from you.
Yeah, I think the challenge with that is, with running performance especially, I found that there are, and triathlon actually, there are people on the internet that seem to care more about my performance than I do.
It's now that there's more. Okay, so I think, as we mentioned it earlier, like with the hate forums and stuff, I think now, because people are making a career out of it, there is far more scope for people to be angry about the lives that other people are leading. So someone like yourself, very successful businessman in your own right with your business, yeah, but you're also a personality online. They'll look at that and go, as you said, he's just paid to be a personality and train for a living. Someone literally said this to me the other week, and it was like, when I was saying, I need to squeeze in these like 2 sessions today. They're like, yeah, but that's your job now. It's like, well, okay, yeah, fair enough. Like it is, I've got the freedom of my time. But also as well, like it's still just me documenting my training. I've still got
But the job isn't to train.
Of other people.
The job isn't to train. The job is to make media about the training.
Exactly, which is the hard part, because that's got to be edited and planned and structured and all of this sort of stuff.
And most importantly, gets in the way of the fucking training.
Yeah, yes. Oh, mate, I know.
Yeah.
That is the one thing. Like I sometimes... But when I was between series, and by the way, I absolutely love the vlogging element of my YouTube channel, like documenting the training. It's amazing because I get something out of it and the audience gets something out of it. As you said, it's that net positive. But I was, after my Ironman, I went out for a run with my fiancée Izzy, and I was like, oh, I don't have to film this. I was like, just going out for a run. I was like, this is really nice.
Yeah.
Just like, and obviously this isn't me saying I don't want to film all of that stuff. This is just me saying sometimes you've got to just ground yourself a little bit and go, okay, this is what I love doing. Take the media away from it as the side that becomes the job. Make sure that it still is what you've always loved about it, and it's just the documenting part of it is just a side bit.
Yeah,
you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Don't take all of the fun and enjoyment out of that activity just because you've made it your job. I guess.
I think a really nice experience I had recently was I went to Spain for a week with my wife Erin.
Yeah,
and it was the first time in 4 years since starting the businesses that I've taken time dedicated off, where if somebody tries to call me and it's not an emergency, I will politely tell them to do one.
Yeah, nice.
So no calls booked in, no meetings booked in, no firm commitments, deadlines or timelines I was working to. First time in 4 years, which was very exciting. So I essentially gave myself the freedom to kind of just decide what to do on a day-to-day basis, which it's essentially a holiday is not a strange.
It's like annual leave.
I don't know why I'm describing a holiday. People understand the concept, but yeah, I went on holiday for the first time in a conventional sense for 4 years. Annual leave, yes. And what I wanted to do day to day was make YouTube videos and train. And that's really, really rewarding for me, because there have been moments over the years when I've thought, fuck, have I ruined this for myself by making this the job, the existence, other people's income is dependent on this, all that sort of stuff. And that's why, as I said earlier, it has to be intrinsically motivating for me. Otherwise, it's a house of cards, effectively. Because if I ever wake up and I don't want to make long-form content and I don't want to train, I will very, very quickly make myself very, very unhappy. So it was really reassuring to me to know that the default settings are make creative long-form content and train. And I really enjoyed doing that without any of the fluff around it that goes into operating that as a business.
You strips it back and you realise what the want from it all is.
Yeah.
Almost.
Yeah.
What's your... I just want to kind of go through all the stuff that you've achieved, because you have done some mad shit.
Yeah.
Like some crazy stuff. Just to name one of them, it was a... What was it? £1,200... sort of like lifting challenge.
Yeah, so £1,200 powerlifting total. So squat, bench, deadlift, £1,200 total, yeah.
Yeah, before starting a 12-hour Ironman attempt.
Yeah, so CrossFit Level 1 stipulated that the quote-unquote, the ideal CrossFit athlete would be able to squat 500 pounds and run a sub 5-minute mile in the same day. I think that was like 2009. And people had tried and never been able to do that. And then in summer of 2020... me and a guy called Adam Klink over in America both did it within 2 weeks of one another, which was hilarious. So 500-pound squat, 227.5 kilos.
Who was first?
Adam was. Yeah. So he was mid-July, I was end of July. So it was actually last weekend, last weekend 5 years ago, that I did that.
And you were the only two people on the planet that have done it so far?
I think there's one or two since that have done it, but
at that time?
At that time, yeah. I don't think anyone else had done it until 2024. And again... I'm of the opinion it should be filmed in a certain way to make it completely verifiable, which isn't me saying that other people haven't done it, but it's in terms of the way that it was formatted and structured, Adam and I had the exact same. It has to be done this way. It has to be posted at this time so that everybody knows it's happening in real time and all this sort of stuff. So that was a big moment in my career, I guess I'll say, because that was a real nice performance tick. And I really like that concept of two numbers that kind of are similar and neat, balanced against one another. So 1 year and 1 day later, I took the same concept and went £1,200 powerlifting total, same day as a sub 12-hour Ironman, which was a very silly idea. So what was it? It was a 205 kilo squat, 121 kilo bench, and a 220 kilo deadlift. I think my swim was...
Single reps, obviously.
Yeah. It was all sub-maximal as well. I think at the time I probably would have been good for about... I probably would have been good for 220 squat, 130 kilo bench, and about 230.
You were pushing it, but not like max.
Yeah, it was like RPE 8.5 max. The bench was strangely challenging because I was so worried about my arse coming up because of powerlifting standards. And it was 3:30 in the morning, so it was it was a weird way to spend a morning. But again, I just really like that polar opposite, other end of the spectrum, testing myself at totally different energy systems and documenting it in a novel way. That's what I really liked about the concept.
So can you timeline the day? What time did you wake up and how did it all play out?
So yeah, £1,200 total, sub 12 Ironman in the same day. I woke up at 2, was in the gym, Nottingham Strong. Shout out Nottingham Strong, opened early. Very, very thankful to them for that. 205 kilo squat was done by 3:15. Bench was done by 3:30, and that was 121 kilos. And deadlift was done by 3:45, and that was 220 kilos.
Are you fueling for this?
So at 2 in the morning, I had big bowl of oats, banana, honey, and then I was sipping on carbs and electrolytes throughout the lifting, but making sure that I wasn't consuming too much, because when you brace into a powerlifting belt, you don't want to feel like bracing too hard sends things the other way, so to speak. So I was done by 4 a.m. and had to be in transition at 5 a.m. for a 6 a.m. swim start. So transition, I want to make sure I was repumping up my bike tires, making sure everything was set up for transition, and was there bang on time. We arrived at 5:03 because the traffic getting in was pretty chaotic. That's why we wanted to be done.
And this was an outlaw event, wasn't it?
Yeah, the outlaw. So it was Ironman distance, not Ironman branded, but don't let Ironman tell you that they own the distance.
No.
Yeah, very key.
Well, that was the thing. So someone commented, sorry to interrupt your story, but someone commented on one of my podcast clips about my 70.3.
Yep.
And we were talking about the referees, and I was saying, are the Ironman referees too strict? And someone commented saying, bro, you did a 70.3, not an Ironman. I was like, look at the name of the company that runs it, mate. I'm literally talking about the referees that are doing the event. Yeah,
it's a funny one that they definitely play into the general consensus that people believe the distance is owned by them. But I think it's important to highlight that it isn't. Ironman's a phenomenal organisation in terms of the events they put on. You know where your money goes when you show up. They put on a show. It's really, really good. They've had the challenges over the years, as everyone has. But Outlaws are very family-friendly, more cost-effective, UK traditional race. Really, really great. So arrived into transition at 5 and kept sipping carbs and electrolytes. Swim start at 6. I think I was in the water at about 6:05.
So did you not have another meal between the lift and?
I can't remember. I don't think I did. I think it might have been a banana or two. I can't remember if I had anything solid. Maybe a flapjack or something like that.
Yeah.
Logic says I would have done, but the sort of the visuals I'm having in my head, I don't remember eating anything. I didn't realize that the swim pen that I was meant to be in was too further ahead than where I was waiting. Okay. So when I started seeing people with orange caps jumping in the water, and I was in an orange cap in a sea of people with green caps, I realized that all of a sudden, okay, I should be up there. So that was a bit of panic to get the heart rate back up.
Squeeze through?
Yeah, everyone was fine with it. They saw my cap and thought, who's this moron? Jumped into the water, goggles immediately came off, good start. And that was the worst 3.8K swim I've ever done in my life.
Because you steamed up?
The goggles coming off wasn't a good start. The increased heart rate and adrenaline of shit, am I going to fail before I've even started the swim by missing my swim pen wasn't great. And I think the lifting definitely affected. It was my scaps, my shoulder blades just felt all over the place. My swim rhythm was off. I never found a rhythm. Okay. It felt like it went on forever. I think it was like a 128 swim, which I should have been doing about 115. So it was
You're a fast swimmer then?
A reasonable swimmer, yeah. I think 128 was disappointing for what I was hoping for on the day. But the good news is, as not wanting to be disappointed with the expectations.
That is crazy fast still.
I was pleased with where I got to, and the swimming is something I improved. We'll come on to it afterwards in terms of how I improved it beyond that further down the line as well. But the swim didn't feel great, but at the end of the day, I just had to get through it because 10, 15 minutes here or there can be made up on the bike or the run easy. So got out of the water, and I think that day there were a few people that had a few stomach issues as a result of being in the water, which we'll come back to. And I then had the bike ride of my life. So I was 5:22, I think, Ironman distance ride. So 33.5, 34K an hour, Amazing. Give or take, average.
Hilly?
So, I think it was 800 meters again across the whole course. So fairly flat by UK standards, but not pancake flat, but not hilly, I wouldn't say. Great course, great event, really, really good, and really pleased with the bike ride. Probably 5 beats per minute average, cooked it a little bit hard based on how I felt on the run, but I was struggling a little bit from the off on the run to get fuel down me because my stomach felt all over the place. Survived to about 30K where I ended up throwing up in a Portaloo and managed to sort of survive through to the end. Don't know whether it was effort exertion, don't know whether it was nutrition being wrong on the day, whether it was the whole lifting at 3 a.m. thing, or whether it was the water.
Okay,
because there were a few other people in Facebook forums saying that they'd had similar issues. But
either
way, got to the point where I had about 10K left, and I was in this very depleted, very confused mental arithmetic of it's been 11 hours and 15 minutes, and you've got to cover this distance and this time, which means that not quite sure. Let's just keep moving. And the last. Is it 3 laps or 4 laps? I think it's 3 laps of Home Pierpont, which is the rowing lake that you do to finish. Might be 2, but 2 or 3 laps. The first one, I remember this clearly because there was a guy with his family on the far right-hand corner that was sat there supporting everyone. Really good show. And I went past him the first time and I was suffering. You'll have seen in my face I was suffering. Very encouraging. And then you cross... You go past the finish line, so you peel off left to the finish line, you can see like the running total. So you run past it and then you do another lap of the lake before coming into there. And I saw the time left. I thought, oh, hang on. I know what a lap of the lake's taken me here and I've got time, so you can actually do this. So then I laid down the hammer, increased the pace, felt like I was moving it. Must have been about 4:10, 4 minute per K pace. Was in that zone for about 200, 300, 400 meters, and then looked down at my watch and I was moving at a 5:10 pace. I was like, oh my God, just distortion of reality at that point.
Experience.
And managed to hold it down, feeling quite sick. But I think the look on the guy's face when I came around that corner and he could see that I'd managed to pull it out of the locker and that I was gritting my teeth, getting some pace up, and
Amazing.
It was a different kind of encouragement. It really helped him. It really helped me from him at the time. So I managed to come in at 11:53:38, I think it was. So job done. And that's a funny one because I'd say it was a bad run for me that day. Stomach issues. I couldn't get fuel in after about 25K, which obviously makes it an absolute nightmare. Throwing up, not good. But yeah, essentially that is, as I said, the variables of triathlon.
Yeah.
You've got 3 components, each with a lot that can go wrong over a long distance. So really pleased to have made it work, and that was number 2 in that sort of neat combination of lifts and endurance components together. Very, very flat when I finished, but really, really enjoyed it as a day, and it was something that at the time people really, really liked in the content format.
Yeah.
6 months later, on December the 10th, I did a 600 kilo powerlifting total the same day as a sub 6 hour, 60 kilometer ultramarathon. So that was a 220 kilo squat, 140 kilo bench, 240 kilo deadlift, and then a 5:54 60K in the same day, which was again the third in that sort of structure of neat numbers. And that was, the lifts moved really well that day, actually. I was really, really pleased with how everything moved. The deadlift especially moved like an empty bar. So I was kind of annoyed I had the run afterwards. Otherwise I would have put even more weight on.
Yeah.
But I just really enjoy, again, no one cares about this format. It's not a competitive format. It's just me thinking.
It's just a challenge you've set yourself.
Yeah, and that's the fun thing. And that's what I really enjoyed them. And honestly, when I think back over the years of the days that I've enjoyed the most, it's ultimately me, often a support person on a bike, a camera person. I'm just fucking around.
Yeah.
I'm just testing myself in a unique way that is kind of fascinating to me, and it's given other people the confidence to be able to commit to a strength goal alongside a half marathon, or to decide, you know what, I've been doing 10 years of lifting in the gym, I am going to sign up to a half marathon because I believe I can do it now. And if that's the outcome, fantastic. But selfishly, I've had a lot of fun dicking around along the way.
Yeah. You mentioned earlier about the sort of hybrid athlete term.
Yep.
You were quite early to it, and your whole brand and Omnia's kind of idea was to improve hybrid athletes and birth hybrid athletes, and just kind of give that structure to people that are wanting to, sort of venture into that world. Where do you think we're at now with it all? What's your take on everything that's going on in the hybrid athlete space?
So the term originated from a book called The Hybrid Athlete, which was published in 2015 by Alex Viada. He started writing it in 2013, I believe, so it's not a new concept.
No.
The book was written in 2015. There are receipts on the internet. The Hybrid Athlete it's called. And the definition was the concurrent training of different athletic disciplines that do not inherently support one another and whose disparate components are not essential to success at any one sport. Which, in simple terms, means training for progress in sporting disciplines that don't complement the other from a strength and conditioning point of view. So pursuing powerlifting performance does not make you a better runner. Pursuing running performance does not make you a better powerlifter. In fact, the opposite is true, because it can get in the way of training allocation towards either or. And that's where the methodology was born from, was essentially trying to optimize the suboptimal to be able to make progress in both concurrently, whilst acknowledging it is a compromise. You're not going to make progress at the same rate were you training as a single discipline, and you're not going to be the best in the world at both, because there is that inherent energy system conflict. Does that mean that you can't move the needle forward slowly in each for the purpose of enjoyment and self-discovery, self-improvement? Absolutely not. The interference effect was a concept that was born in the sort of late 1900s as well, that was then quite contributive to the misconception that cardio kills your gains, bro. And the interference effect is effectively the theory that one energy system blocks off adaptation in the other. So,
or like if you run, your legs get skinny.
Effectively, because there's been lots of other studies on it now that have all explored these things into a meta-analysis, and essentially the interference effect was specifically exploring mTOR as an energy pathway and sort of the downregulation of AMPK and this sort of thing. And if you were to lift before you were running, or you were to run before you're lifting, there was a misconception that it was like an on or off switch. Mm-hmm. It definitely blunts adaptation, but it doesn't turn it off. So it's just a reduction, which doesn't mean it can't happen. So that's kind of the context that matters. Hybrid training doesn't mean just doing a little bit of this and a little bit of that, as in line with the original definition. Mm-hmm. Alex doesn't really argue his case on this, because he's not particularly brash online, but it's a concept that he came up with as a solution to the challenge of balancing both. It's now evolved into kind of just a little bit of this and a little bit of that, which I don't think is a problem, because it means that more people have the confidence to try more things, which is a massive net positive.
When you say a little bit of this, a little bit of that, what you actually like?
I think it's just the
sort of like burpees and things like that.
Yeah, essentially, I'd encourage people to view things. One, I'd encourage people to understand the original definition and what the concept was aiming to address in the first place, because it isn't just training, bro. It isn't just fitness, bro. In the same way that powerlifting and bodybuilding both involve weights, you wouldn't just call them resistance training, bro, which is kind of where things have gone. And what I enjoy the most is the CrossFitters that really argue against the hybrid training stuff when they have only recently, after years of fighting to become valid in their sport, now doing exactly what they were criticizing others for all those years ago when they were saying CrossFit isn't a real thing, bro. So I encourage people to understand and get up to speed with the original definition and how it was intended to be utilized. But I would also encourage people to use whatever the concept means to them as a way of exploring things that are exciting to them. Mm-hmm. Anyone that's in the space in a professional capacity that is unaware of the origins of the term, I'd probably disagree with that. But at the end of the day, I'm not the creator of the term. It's not my place to say, and I don't really care.
That is so fair, because I'm kind of the same. Like, whenever I see people criticizing people doing fitness online, I was like, yeah, but they're literally doing fitness. Like, why are you asked? Like, honestly,
and this infighting it's not new, it's human nature, but it's the whole triathletes versus cyclists. Oh, why choose to be average at 3 sports rather than good at 1? Said by the average cyclist. It's like, we're all fucking average.
Yeah.
Like, we're all doing this recreationally. We've all got jobs, lives, and families. The fact that we're doing anything should be celebrated. And by the way, we're doing the same thing. Why do you just like, exactly. Yeah. Shouldn't we be holding hands and being, thank fuck I found another middle-aged man that's also escaping his chaotic family on a Saturday morning to ride his bike? Instead,
wearing
I'm
lycra,
calling him a dick because he's got a shiv works rather than a bloody canyon. You're like, what's going on? This is mad. So I think that's my biggest frustration with it, is the need for everything to be so boxed, I guess is the way of phrasing it. The beauty of hybrid training, as it was intended, is that it allows you to pursue progress in different disciplines without the fear of going backwards or letting go of what you've worked hard to build elsewhere. And I think that's important, but that does require specific programming, specific understanding, dialing up certain dials, dialing down certain dials, and an understanding of the energy systems at play. Otherwise, it is just a case of throwing lots of different disciplines together and hoping for the best.
Would you say Hyrox elite athletes are hybrid athletes?
In and of themselves, it would. Hyrox in and of itself, I would argue, is not in line with the original definition hybrid by design, because it doesn't have a top end strength component. It's all very much in an energy system capacity, very much in the sort of strength endurance component, because there are no weights involved in Hyrox that you are designed for the person not be able to lift them, and that is how strength is measured. It's maximal output, not sustained sub-maximal output. So in the event itself, it's a sport in and of itself. So training your strength metrics alongside your running metrics for Hyrox is just training for the sport itself. If somebody was pursuing powerlifting alongside Hyrox, that would fit within the original definition. But the way that the elites train, because it will have a top-end strength component in it, I'd say that they're utilizing a hybrid training methodology to be able to improve their output in Hyrox. Again, whether they call themselves hybrid athletes or not, I don't really care, nor should my opinion on it really matter. But I think, again, all I'm really trying to do with this conversation, whenever I have it, which I have a lot, and every time I'm on a podcast, is encourage people to understand the origin of the term and what it was designed to address in the first place, rather than looking at the current confusion on it and just viewing it as a trend or something that's this month's buzzword or whatever it might be. Because the outcome is there are a lot of people that weren't previously running or weren't previously using any form of resistance training that are now doing a bit more, which is a net positive outcome for us all to some degree. Yes, there can be some negatives that come with that. Yes, I'd argue that some elements of certain communities have gone a little bit more down the hyper-competitive, egotistical route, but that's going to happen in any sport. And there'll always be these little factions that form that have the infighting, which I would always discourage. But I think the world has changed in terms of how people interact with performance And I think the best thing to come out of the confusion around the term, potentially, if you want to call it that, is that more people are viewing performance at a personal level as something that they aspire to achieve, rather than separating it as something that is only available to those that don't live a normal life.
Yeah.
And I do think that the pursuit of performance out with the grey area of commuting into work and working wherever someone might do, the black and white element of input v output in training in whatever discipline that person chooses, having that controllable, intentional pathway towards something that feels like a sense of achievement is one of the best things that we can do in the modern world to look after ourselves.
Yeah, I do have so much respect for individuals training for Ironmans alongside full-time jobs, because, you know, I only did a 7.3 and I work for myself, and I found it a lot to juggle, and it's insane. So yeah, hats off to anyone that is doing that. Something we touched on earlier that I want to revisit is the bashing of the male loneliness epidemic.
Yep.
What are your takes on this? As someone who has previously suffered with mental health negativity, and, you know, having a suicide attempt is pretty dark, man. And that's something that you've had to deal with. How does it make you feel seeing this sort of bashing of men being sad?
Yeah, there has been a lot. But my big project I've got coming up next year, I'm returning to my roots, so to speak. So I'm going all in again on what I truly care about, which is campaigns and interactive projects for this cause.
Yeah.
And this year, there's a narrative online that's making me think, oh God, am I going to have to prepare to tackle this in a way that I've never had to do previously? Because 2018, 2019, 2020, the 3 big Movember campaigns I did, raised over £100,000. I'd never had anyone go, well, what about this? Well, what about that? Oh, you believing in this means that you believe in that. And all of this whataboutism that's now online. And whether it's the male loneliness epidemic or geopolitics, this weird tendency that the modern world's created where it has to be an either-or situation blows my mind. You care about men's mental health, therefore you don't care about women's mental health, is not...
Yeah, no one said that.
Yeah, no, that's not an equation that anyone believes exists.
Yeah.
In my opinion, it's certainly not an equation I believe exists. But I can speak honestly and authentically with experience on my experience as a male with loneliness, mental health, and a suicide attempt. It would be naive, foolish, and ignorant of me to try and put myself in a woman's shoes without that experience and try and proselytize on what that experience would be like for them. Mm-hmm. So for me, to understand my experience, take the lessons from it that can maybe be applied in a familiar way to others and have an impact at a small level on other men that might find familiarity with my experience, is something I'm going to do every single fucking time without a second guess, because that's where I can allocate my expertise. And I mean, it's not expertise, it's just experience. And in the same way that I wouldn't expect other people to care about the things that I'm most passionate about based on my experience to the same level that they would about theirs. And that's ultimately the beauty of people and individuality. So there is a male loneliness epidemic. It's been getting worse and worse as the years go on. And I do think that ultimately it's our own fault in many ways. And that's coming from someone whose warped sense of masculinity drove me to the point where I would rather have chosen death over honesty in my own situation, which is horrifying, because my definition of being a man was dealing with it all myself, being stubborn, saying that everything was okay at all times, being able to maintain it all by myself, being able to provide, being able to stay true to what I said I'd do, being successful, all these cliched things. I could go on and on and on. And that didn't come from my parents. It didn't come from my schooling. It didn't come from my sporting background. It came from the world in which I had grown up in. Mm-hmm. And for whatever reason, that was the way in which I interacted with the world. And when I did start to suffer with depression over the next 18 months, it got worse and worse and worse. And I put on more and more of a show, and I got lonelier and lonelier and lonelier. And interestingly, I was in a documentary with Roman Kemp called Our Silent Emergency in 2021, which was his exploration of losing his.
I think I watched that. Actually.
He was losing his friend Joe. So I was in there as a survivor of a suicide attempt, alongside segments from families that had sadly lost people and things like that. And he asked me a question.
Sorry to did he interview you on Arthur's Seat?
It was a park bench with the castle in the background.
Yes,
Yeah.
I remember that.
Yeah. So that was in that conversation. He asked me. I can't remember the exact question, but it was along the lines of how did I consider what I was leaving behind and what other people would have to experience as a result of that, which kind of threw me a bit because it's not something I'd ever really considered, whether out of willing ignorance or just hadn't considered it. And the answer was that I didn't, because what I realized in that moment was that I was in such a desperate situation in my own head and such an irrational situation in my own head that I wasn't choosing to die. I just needed a moment of peace.
Right.
Was the way that I viewed it. And somehow, in that moment, again, with a rational mind now, I can't comprehend my thought process, but that doesn't matter because it was a reflection of where I was at the time. And it was that somehow I managed to repackage what reality was just so I could find some peace for a little bit. And the saddest thing is, when I came around from the attempt and the sort of method was I was so intoxicated still that I could think, but I couldn't really move. I could hear footsteps outside the door of my room from just people interacting in my flat that didn't know what was going on behind the door. And the first overwhelming emotion that I experienced was anger at the fact that the one initiative I'd taken in the past 2 years to, in my mind, improve my situation or have an impact on my situation had failed. And that is the example that just makes me realize how warped and irrational my mind had become, and why I think we often, and even I often, fall back into this trap of trying to rationalize the irrational when it comes to this conversation, because at the end of the day, all of the logic in the world that you could have applied to me at that time wouldn't have been received because of the headspace that I was in. And that's why I think discourse and ultimately passion for people that are willing to talk about this situation can have a huge impact, because it can help those that are in an irrational state of mind find some solace in the fact that they're not alone. And that was the big thing for me, was I genuinely felt like I was the first person in the world that was in a privileged position to feel like this, and therefore I was a failure because of that.
You know what's crazy about that is the fact that, like, now, if you were to chat to someone who had recently, let's say, survived a suicide attempt, I can almost guarantee that at one point in their mind, they would have somehow stumbled across someone speaking openly about doing it, but because they were in such a bad place, not ignore it, but think, oh, that's not relevant to me because I'm a lot worse. But in your situation, you felt like you were the only person that would ever have gone through that.
It was very much ballasted by what I believed other people's expectations were of me, but ultimately those were my own expectations of myself. And as I said earlier, I had this master plan. I'd mapped out my life from leaving school to when I was 40 in every cliche in the book of best grades, best uni, best exams, best job, best promotion, best bonus, best this, best that, job, family, big house in Mallorca, Range Rover, job done. And that was kind of the way that I'd mapped out my life. And every decision had to be in line with that. So because I'd committed to that, and because I had big expectations for myself and I was willing to do the work, but university wasn't the environment for me at the end of the day. That's a big part of it, and that's a whole nother conversation. But I think the bottom line was, because I'd said I was going to do it, and I'd said that publicly, I couldn't ever admit that wasn't the case. And the guilt was really the thing that made me spiral, plus the loneliness, because the guilt of, I have a roof over my head, there's people much worse off than you, my parents, as I said, all the things I said earlier. I had access to support, fortunately. I didn't need to worry about where my next meal was coming from. I mean, I just felt pathetic. That was the way that I viewed myself. You are pathetic for finding yourself in the situation because you've had all this support that you could have accessed and you fucked it up. And then big defining moment was, I realized a full week had gone by, Sunday to Sunday, where I hadn't had a human interaction with anyone other than in like a barista or a Tesco cashier or something. And it's a weird kind of the loneliness that I experienced then. That it's like the weight of the loneliness that I experienced then. I can't actually put it into words. It was a very weird sensation. It was. I think it's part of how I managed to rationalize the fact that I wasn't trying to take my own life, but I was just trying to find some peace, because when I felt that lonely, I genuinely felt disconnected from the world.
Wow.
And now, like, I'm it's kind of not an awkward giggling, but it's an incomprehensible. I just can't understand now with a rational mind how
you felt like that.
I don't get it, but it is a part of me, and it's somewhere that I've been, and that's important to highlight, because I think for me it means that whenever I know someone's going through something and I try and be supportive, I can always do better with that. And look, I get busy, and I can definitely do better, and I'm sure we all can. I try not fall into the trap of trying to understand first and foremost. I think the first and foremost thing to do is to be able to support and be able to break that loneliness cycle a little bit, because it is a spiral. I made myself more lonely through my own choices as a result of being a little bit lonely in the first place. And it's that
self sabotage.
Yeah, but it came from a place of ambition. And I think that's a challenge these days, because you've got little fucking hurricane renting morons over in Dubai selling you the dream online of you can Forex exchange your way to this and that and all this sort of stuff, and everything's so readily accessible. AI is taking over the world. There's lots and lots of ways to make money. There's lots of ways to break away from this and that.
Get out of the quote unquote matrix.
Yeah, and
all this stuff.
I think it's all this stuff. Look, there are lots and lots of creative ways to make money, to make a life that you care about and earn in different ways that are not conventional. And HMRC, for one, haven't caught up with that way of working, but that's a whole nother conversation as well. But it's a case of, the world has moved on at a pace that the systems within it are struggling to keep up with, which is where we're kind of vulnerable. And with desperation comes opportunity, and that opportunity, I think, is really selling that dream to those that are ambitious, or those that want to move things forwards now, which is only going to make it worse. Because for me, my ambition is what made me feel like a failure, because I'd set myself. You know what it is? It is literally a microcosm of that exact example. I'd said, I'm doing my first Ironman. I want to go sub 12. And I was on track for 12 and a half hours, and I thought, you're a fucking useless bastard. You're failing. And that was the narrative that I fed myself. And that was that's kind of the way I view it. Is I'd looked too far into my future, not accounted for the grey area and the variables that go into that along the way, because I was young and naive and hadn't experienced much of real life. And the stubbornness and ambition within me prevented me from sharing that with the world. And that's what contributed to my male loneliness. And it's something that I've seen in others. And because that's something that I've experienced, I would like to contribute to having an impact on that social problem. If I start trying to have an impact on every possible social problem that appears at any one time, I'll be just as useless as every single politician in this country. And that's something that I'd like to avoid doing. I would like to focus on things that I know I can have an impact on, and that I'm excited about contributing to, because I know if I'm excited about contributing to something, then I'll have a good impact on it. To tie it right back to the question on the sort of anti-male loneliness epidemic content that's appearing online, and this weird belief that we should all care equally about all things at once. It's not possible. We know that's not possible, in the same way that otherwise every business in the world would be one person companies, which we know isn't the case. But like you were saying, I think I am firmly of the belief that individuality is to be celebrated, but not generalized. In the sense that I care about strength and endurance training and making content. Other people care about seeing positive returns on the S&P 500. Some people care about owning a coffee shop. Some people care about doing data entry so that they can go and spend their weekends hiking mountains in Wales, and everything in between. That's great. That's what makes us all unique. That's what makes the world multicultural. I think these are all things that have been celebrated, but the crux of the question on this is how I'm thinking about it anyway for when I take on these projects next year is I want to celebrate and want to really advocate for people having an impact on the things that they are good at and care about. And not falling into the trap of believing that because of those things, other people feel the same way. And it goes to, like we were saying with training and all of this stuff before. But I think a lot of the algorithmic problems online are that negativity and anti this is well fed and it's rewarded. So I'd like to believe at our core that we do all still believe that we can't have the same impact on everything all at once. Otherwise, we're just treading water.
Yeah.
And I think for me, that's why I don't think people are being rewarded for their individuality as much as they once were, because I think we've actually maybe lost a little bit of sight of how much our own individuality should be celebrated in some ways, unless you're a massive dickhead, obviously, in which case work on that. But yeah, I don't know. I'm pondering a lot of this at the moment myself, and yeah, the more time I spend getting sucked into any short form platforms or anything, the more despairing I become with it all. Because I'm very do the reps, learn the lessons, apply the lessons, move on, driven now, having not been in the future. I've been fortunate enough to have lots of experiences that have taught me some valuable lessons that make me who I am today. And it is very, very difficult world to exist in now.
Yeah.
And every media platform is being rewarded for making us feel worse about the world in which we exist, which is not a good place to be, but it's not something I can have a direct impact on at a macro level. So
you can't do anything about it as well, because the more someone responds to something and the more people that engage with something, whether it's all 99.9% negative, it's still rewarding that content. Yeah. So it's such a hard nut to crack. And I don't truly believe society, particularly in the UK, can be happier until we start just rewarding people more for hard work. And I feel like that's something that has always happened. Like, people have been fucked over by jobs and people have been shafted by society and the government and stuff. But I don't think truly we can then have this sense of pride for a nation and have people happy to be from somewhere and have that sense of belonging the same way other countries do, until we find the deep root as to why people are unhappy. And I don't think it's a financial thing at the moment. I think it's more of a deep-rooted emotional thing that stems from financials, obviously. I personally think that the happiness of the world, the UK, particularly in men, just comes from feeling like what they're doing day to day has a sense of value.
Yep.
Yeah. Whether they think about the value or not, everything comes down to the point of, I'm sat in this job right now, what value does it have to me? That value might be getting paid 150k a year, so you just suck it up if it's really, really hard work and you have to work till 4 a.m. That's so be it. That's your decision, you know. But whether it could be someone who's a park ranger and their value is going around, like seeing the dogs all day.
Yeah. I've met people with more money than they can know what to do with and can't spend it quicker than they earn it, and they're less happy than the park ranger example. Yeah. For example, just because at the end of the day, happiness and fulfillment underpin our existence, and I have made the mistake of following the wrong pathways and deprioritizing that. So I try and make that pretty central to all of my decision making now. And if I had to tear it all up and sort of start again, I'd still try and make that the central principle. But I do think it's very difficult. We don't have as much. I mean, look, I haven't lived through previous generations, obviously, and there's things I'm a little bit cynical about in the UK at this point, and I think it may be getting a little bit worse in terms of a lot of the things that you just said. But for me, the core is that I don't think people have the disposable income or the time to be able to explore the things that make them fulfilled outside of day-to-day life anymore. And that is part of the problem. Yeah. And having, in my very limited view here of my experience of when I've lived like that, it made me very unhappy. And I'm very proud of myself for being able to highlight that. Yeah. Albeit as a result of having gone through a very negative experience, to be able to take action to fix it, albeit making it up as I went along and somehow figuring it out as things unfolded. But for me, I found the existential dread that comes from thinking about this stuff too much. I do try and just focus on the things that I can control day to day. What impact do I want to have on the world? What issues do I want to care about and have an impact on? And how do I try and curate these things day to day so that I'm doing the best that I can? Because I unfortunately can't give much more detail on next year because it's all building. But the projects I've got coming next year are, I'm going back to the things that I really care about, and ultimately I can pursue now because I'm not as operationally completely stretched every day, which is the result of 4 years of hard work, but also incredible team behind the scenes and lots of patience and all that sort of stuff, which is great. But I know that the impact I can have with that is one of the, if I was to allocate all of my resources to having the most positive net impact on the world in which I can have an impact on, I firmly believe what I'm going to pursue is that. And therefore, being distracted by anything else that doesn't contribute to me having the best possible impact I can have on the limited space in which I can have it is just distraction.
Yeah.
And whilst that means I might not give as much attention to an issue that somebody cares about in the same way that they might not give as much attention to an issue that I care about, that's absolutely fine because we're all individual, have different values.
Yeah,
but
horses for courses.
If we stop caring about these issues and just sit on our asses and complain all the time, then I don't think that's going to help. And I do think that's becoming increasingly more difficult to not do. The sit on the arses is a harsh way of saying it, but it's becoming more and more difficult in today's landscape to not just think, well, what impact can I have? But I guess that's kind of the crux of the question I always try and ask myself, and I'd encourage others to ask themselves, because that ultimately is all we can really do.
There is nothing more frustrating than someone with insane potential sitting back and complaining about a problem that they could easily deal with. Do you know what I'm saying?
And I think a lot of the, maybe I'm generalizing, and look, I'm naive to it, but it pisses me off whenever I see it. The anti-male loneliness epidemic content I've seen all tends to come from people that have lives that don't have many problems in them in the first place, which means that they look to tear down, they look to create problems.
It's that generalization, isn't it?
Yeah. And I think, I keep bringing it back to that because, that's the one thing that I've allowed myself to get a bit absorbed into, mainly academically, so I can be prepared on how to handle it if I receive any of it when I'm taking on my campaigns next year. That has made me feel a little bit sad about the state of the world, because having experienced that myself and having known that I've had a positive impact on some people directly, to have someone challenge that in a way where they can't possibly have the understanding of the experience, in the same way that I couldn't possibly have an understanding of what it's like to, I don't know, be marginalized in the workplace, things like that. I haven't experienced that. So therefore, for me to try and impart expertise or opinions on that to the same level as someone that has would be a sort of logical fallacy in mind. That wouldn't make sense. So I think that's where I'm going to focus a lot of my energy on trying to battle that narrative. Yeah, amazing. So we'll see what happens.
Incredible message behind what you're doing, and it's just so amazing to see and speak to you now, like face to face, about all the incredible stuff you've done. I just want to close off with a little dilemma.
Yep.
I saw this on TikTok, and so I'm going to give credit to the person that did come up with it. I can't remember your username, but I'll have it in the caption of this clip, or whatever it is. I saw a dilemma as a man who's run and competed in multiple Ironman events.
I know what this is going to be.
You know what this is going to be, yeah?
Yeah.
Okay, so we've got the three goats of the three disciplines.
Yep.
You've got Michael Phelps, the goat of swimming. You've got Tadej Pogacar, the goat of cycling. And you've got Eliud Kipchoge, the goat of marathon running. If these three were to compete in a full Ironman distance, who would win?
That Pogacar guy.
Pogacar.
Yeah. It's... Did you see that? If anyone's not up to speed on the Tour de France, let me summarize it for you. Did you see that thing? Yeah. It was like, what was it? That Pogacar guy has been pedaling faster than all the other guys, and if any of them catch up to him, he starts pedaling faster and gets ahead again.
It's
true. That's spot on.
Yeah.
An Ironman, triathlon in general is made or lost on the bike. Yeah. Well, to a certain degree, it can be won on the run, but I'd say it's made or lost on the bike.
If you're Alex Yee and you're doing like an Olympic distance or a super try, it can be won on the run very easily because of his ability to crush the run. But I think it's got to be Pogacar.
He's just disgustingly good at what he does.
I know.
And so nonchalant about it.
Mate, even if he does the swim 2 hours slower than Phelps,
Yeah.
let's say,
Yeah.
he still beats him on the bike.
Can he swim? I assume he can swim. But I mean, he might have just been straight out of the womb and onto a bike his whole life and never done anything else for all we know.
Just into the mountains.
But again,
man.
the cross-training benefit of cycling to running will be much more translatable than running to cycling. And I think Kipchoge's limb length wouldn't lend himself very well to big power on the bike. But he weighs the square root of 3 kilos. So I think...
He can hill climb. He'll be able to hill climb.
He would be, would be flying. But for this example, I'd like to think it'd be a flat course. Phelps is built like an absolute weapon as well, and has legs up to his nipples, so he could probably.
That's the one thing that I'm like, right. Well, let's say
he's quite heavy though, isn't he? I think he's quite tall. His wingspan implies
swimmers have big, sort of broad top section. So
I actually think Kipchoge would be the worst.
Yeah,
by actually quite some margin, which is a sentence I apologise for immediately.
Swimming a bike, I think he'd be weak at.
Yeah, I mean, ultimately compared to all these three, I'm absolutely shit at all these three things. So really, shouldn't even be. It's a hypothetical. Yeah, I know, but it's just even saying the words Kipchoge would perform poorly made me go, oh god,
wince.
Yeah, but no, I think it's a firm win for.
Do you think he wins by a long way?
Yeah, probably. Because again, even if Phelps showed up on the run, I can imagine he's got a much bigger frame, which means the impact's going to have much more of an impact. Yeah. And I don't know how much Tadej weighs, but it won't be much.
I looked at Pogacar's Strava, and I think...
Is it public?
Yeah. Like, you can look at his 10K PR. Let me pull it up. Because I found it funny. I was like absolutely smoke him at the run.
Is that the case, or
no? I did.
You do?
Yeah,
okay.
I would smoke him at the run, which is he's not even got a mil, which is pretty crazy. But he's done no cycling this week. Absolute slouch, mate.
Too much for Katja.
Best efforts. Here we go.
What I really like is. I don't know what the song it is, and actually, it's a terrible person to bring up. But there's a Kanye West song, which. I can't remember which it is, but it's like Pogacar.
Oh yeah.
And if you listen for Pogacar, you hear it.
I know.
It's just perfect.
Right. So let me go through his best efforts according to Strava. So this is Tadej Pogacar's running efforts on his public Strava. 5K PB. I want your guess.
We're going to come across as such haters in this clip, but I'm okay with it because
I've got the facts in front of me, so don't get me in
It's
that
5K PB. 24:58.
Slower. 27:54. Wow. Average pace of 5:35. Look, again, this might have been years ago. Who knows? And then we've got his 10K. It's interesting. What do you think?
An hour and 3.
Slower. An hour and 19.
Wow.
So I feel like this could be wrong. I don't know. And then half marathon he's never done. He's never run longer than 10K.
Too busy winning the Tour de France.
Exactly. Yeah. Bit of a decent athlete.
Yeah, I mean, he is just a fantastic example of. I mean, he's Tiger Woods level good. Yeah, I'd say relative to the rest of the field. Yeah, it's very cool to see. Very cool to see, and I do like that. Actually, personalities are starting to shine through in these sports a bit more because all of the cynics in the forums online that we've touched on very briefly haven't grasped the concept that the world has moved on and that the average person now has a lot more of a concept of what performance looks like, but they only care or connect with it if there is a personality at the center of it. Mm-hmm. Out and out performance. Usain Bolt, great, best example. Why is he the most famous Olympian of all time? Because he wasn't incredibly boring. Yeah. And he had things
put on a show,
he put on a show, and that's what really, really built it. And whilst Tadej isn't lighting up rooms, he's on podcasts, he's doing all these things, and I think it's the best thing possible. I think sport is the greatest thing in the world, creates the best stories, the best connections. There's far too much infighting. And actually, I think the combination of media plus professional performance, whilst, yes, I think it's probably a massive pain in the arse for a lot of professional athletes to have to make content at a decent level as well as training like professional athletes these days, is massively net positive for all of the sports at play, but is different to how it used to be. Mm-hmm. So I do understand why there's a little bit of cynicism from sports that have been around for a long time, cycling, running, all these things, where there's a lot of content where media is the output, not performance. But at the end of the day, if the media gets people running because they feel relatable to it more than the performance does, then actually that's arguably a better outcome. Yeah. So, yeah, all I encourage is discourse and an open mind. That's kind of my view on things.
Thank you so much for coming on. It's been an incredible chat.
No, I appreciate it. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, thanks for making the journey, man, and enjoy the rest of your time in London.
I will do. Thank you.
Yeah. Look, if you want to give Fergus a follow, if you're not already, all his links will be in the description or the show notes if you're listening or watching. As usual, every Thursday. Well, I did miss last week, but look, it's me running the show on my own here, so you got to bear with me sometimes. But look, make sure you're following the podcast, rate it 5-star, whatever audio platforms you listen to, subscribe on YouTube, and yeah, just drop this episode a little like. Let me know who you want to see on, and I'll catch you next week. Take care.